So Lucas, I have this BenQ 27-inch 1440p monitor that's like super color accurate, like can be calibrated. Like this monitor is made for color grading. It's also USB-C. Do you want that monitor?
I like how you're like, hey, Lucas, got a question. Hold on. I'm going to start the show real quick.
I gotta put you on the spot on air because maybe you'll feel more pressured to say yes.
Jeez.
Because monitors just happen to me. And I mean, they don't happen to me. I buy them, but then I have to get rid of them.
But then they also happen to you. Daniel, I have received one free monitor from you, and I have purchased a monitor from you from which I paid that in $1 bills.
I remember. And I think you ran around my apartment making it rain with those $1 bills.
I hid them all over your apartment. That's right.
And I was finding them up until I moved out. I think I might have found one under the couch when I moved out.
I'm not going to say no, but I have a 34-inch ultra wide, and I don't really want to go back to a 2-monitor lifestyle, and I don't know where I would put it, though I would strongly prefer a more color accurate monitor for all of the grading stuff that I do, because right now I use, when I'm at my desk and working on a video, I'll do the clean feed out to my Mac screen, and then I'll use my ultra wide as like my editing interface, and so I kind of like looking between the two, but I mean, that's not as good as using something that's calibrated like a BenQ.
Sure. You know what else the BenQ has? It has a hood that goes around the monitor.
I don't think that's...
Do you know how legit you would look if you had that on there?
Who's watching me color grade?
No, it's not for that. It's to keep the sun from glaring on it.
No, yeah, but you said that I would look more legit.
Oh, okay.
I guess I could post pictures of my setup to the internet.
You could.
And that way I could brag and dunk on people for how cool my setup is.
It's true. Just think about it. That's all I'm saying. Just think about it.
I'm not saying no, but like, I'm not necessarily saying yes right now either.
I will throw in an adjustable monitor mount that you can clamp to the desk, and you can just have that thing off to the side. It'll be perfect.
That's a pretty good deal. But off to the side means I have to look over there. Like if I'm color grading, I want to be like right in on the monitor. Yeah, I would have to put it like over top of my other monitor somehow.
Maybe have it so you can like pull it down in front.
Sure, why not? Does it connect? Can I take that monitor mount to the ceiling?
I mean, probably.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, there you go.
There's other things I have to spend my money on, Daniel, rather than buying BenQ monitors from you.
Well, what kind of things would those be?
Well, you're currently trying to make me buy an XT5.
That's true.
Within the next few weeks.
I mean, you're running out of time on that.
I'm running out of time.
Because you're going to be walking the streets of Paris and you're going to see a Frenchman walk by holding a baguette. Do you want that picture to be 26 megapixels or 40 megapixels?
Dang it.
I mean,
I'm going to shoot that.
That's the only thing you have to answer.
I'm going to shoot that on film. I don't know what you're talking about.
Of course you are.
So I'm looking at this XT5 on KEH that's $14.93.
And what's the condition on that?
And the condition is EX, which I think for them means that it's heavily used.
Because they do have a like new.
Yeah, they have new, like new minus, excellent plus, excellent, bargain, ugly, and as is. So excellent is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th rating down.
That's pretty far down. I don't know.
I don't like KEH's descriptions.
Me neither. It feels like title inflation, right?
Mm-hmm. This is a bargain.
Yep. Mm-mm. So for reference, mine was $14.50 on B&H, and that was a like 10 good as new. You know, like the quality level was a 10 from B&H, and it was cheaper than that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so it's okay, because the problem is right now you can't buy an XT5 new.
Yeah, they're hard to find.
Yeah. So I mean, like, given that, it's a good deal.
Which is why I feel a lot of now or never pressure on this. Like if I'm looking for a used XT5 and they're hard to find, like, what am I gonna like?
That's a good question.
I need you to tell me whether or not to pull the trigger on this.
Man, if it was in like new condition, I would say no question you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the EX is giving me pause a little bit.
Really? So you're a little wavering on the condition potential.
It's probably fine. Like you use your camera a lot, and with this camera you would want to be taking it places a lot, and so I feel like you would get it to EX condition pretty quickly, even if you bought it new. So maybe in that sense, it's okay.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, excellent doesn't generally, that means that the sensor is fine, which is really what I care about. As long as the sensor is fine and it doesn't have any like cracks on the screen, then I'm fine. Like if I look at the bottom of the camera and there's a circle where someone's been screwing and unscrewing a tripod plate, cool.
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, it's like you would probably build up that wear anyway. So
for sure. Like, have you seen my XT3? I've been looking at that closely because I've been thinking like, man, I'm gonna have to sell this when I get an XT5 if I ever get an XT5. And Daniel, it's not pretty. It looks well loved.
It's got a patina.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, as long as it doesn't have a patina on the sensor, you're fine.
Oh, like my last camera?
Yeah, your last camera definitely had a patina on the sensor.
Yep.
I don't know. I think you probably should go for it just because they're so hard to find right now, and that price is pretty good.
I just really don't feel like spending the money on another new camera, but also I feel a lot of pressure maybe this is like a bigger conversation. I feel a lot of pressure because I'm going on this trip, and it's like I want to capture all these memories and this sort of stuff. And I mean, I know that I don't need a 40 megapixel camera to capture pictures on my vacation because 70% of those pictures are going to be just really stupid snapshots. And then maybe, I don't know, 15 to 20 of them are going to be, bangers, as they say, as the kids say.
I think if there's any reason you should be feeling pressure, it's because you have a reputation to uphold.
Oh, dang.
And in this group of people you're going on this trip with, you are the photographer. Even though I'm also there, and there is also another person there who's a photographer, out of all that, you're the one who always has a camera in your hand.
But you don't wear the hipsterness on your sleeve like me. You're right. Yeah. I just always have a camera. I've normalized the picture taking. They're probably expecting me to document this whole thing.
I mean, they are. I can.
No one else is going to bring a camera.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, they're going to be like, Lucas, did you get a picture of this thing?
Yep.
I'm not even going to ask you.
What if I just didn't bring my XT5 on that trip?
Oh. It would kill me, Daniel. He'd be like, it's new, it's a little expensive. I didn't want to risk losing it. I decided to bring the XT30 and then I'm going to sell that one afterwards. So help me, Daniel. I'd push you out of the plane.
Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video. By the way, I did some research, and our plane is an Airbus, so it'll be more challenging to push me out of the plane than it would have been if it was a Boeing.
That's not okay, Daniel. You can't say that. I had 2 other pre-show topics, and I'm just going to push them both the next week.
Sounds good.
I don't know why. We don't even have that much to talk about.
I mean, this is a serious show.
Very serious.
We got to get into it.
Okay. You know Ricoh Pentax?
Yeah, I've seen them around.
Does Ricoh own Pentax or does Pentax own Ricoh?
I don't know. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I actually don't know the answer to that question.
I think Pentax came first.
Maybe so.
But I think Ricoh owns Pentax. I own a Ricoh camera.
You do? That it's like a Theta, is that the name of it? The 360 camera?
That's right.
Pretty cool. You didn't even know it. I remember when you got that, and you were like, I've never heard of this.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what this is.
You were trying to pronounce the name Ricoh?
Yep. I said ricotta cheese.
Yep.
Anyway, I think Ricoh owns Pentax. So that doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about right now. We're not even going to talk about their new film camera that's coming out this year.
Shocker.
Fingers crossed. They came out with a new Ricoh GR III.
Yeah, they did. And the GR3 was pretty popular, so it's interesting news.
It's still pretty hard to buy a GR3. That's the X100 effect.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's quite a bit cheaper than the X100, right? Like $1,000, $1,100 maybe?
Yeah, it's right around there. It's right around the $1,000, $1,100
I mean,
price
now that the X100 is $1,600, that's a major price difference.
Yeah, well, but also like the Ricoh 3 came out in 2020 maybe?
Yeah.
It's a pretty old camera, and they just keep releasing new versions, but not new versions. Like they have the same lenses and the same sensor, and they're just like, what if we made it with a yellow circle on the lens and called it a street version? Or what if we like made it, blue and called it a midnight version? Or
I mean, I'm not going to complain about colors. That's pretty cool.
Like, there's a lot of cool, the urban edition, street edition, diary edition. There's a lot of different versions and special editions of this camera.
Yeah.
But it's still basically the same camera that they released 4 years ago.
Okay.
And
so spec wise, it probably doesn't really stack up to the X106.
Exactly. But, you know, we want a GR4. Be cool to see a GR4.
Sure.
That is not what they released. They released a GR3 and GR IIIx HDF.
What does HDF mean?
High definition filter? Maybe?
I think isn't it like
huge dang filter?
I thought it was like highlight diffusion filter.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I know it had highlight in it.
Yeah. It's basically like a Pro Mist or a Synbloom.
Which is pretty cool, right? Because the X106 has a built-in ND, which is pretty neat.
Well, the GR IIIx has a built-in ND.
Okay. So the standard one has a built-in ND, but then they have this other one where they replaced the ND with a Pro Mist. Is that what you're saying?
That's essentially what they're doing here. They took the ND out, they put in a mist filter, and there you go.
That's pretty cool.
It's cool. It's cool to have the option of just,
which one would you pick?
The ND version. I'm not crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
I would pick the Pro Mist because I know that there are a couple of scenarios where ND is useful in photos. Like doing, water shots, or if you want to get like the hipster blurry thing or whatever. But I don't know. I don't find myself doing that very much. And I feel like in the few scenarios I wanted to do that, maybe there's an aftermarket ND I can like screw on or something. Whereas the Pro Mist, like that's kind of like a film simulation.
Yeah, it's similar to, it reminds me of the Instax 99 that we've talked about, where it's like, and you can turn on this button that flashes a light inside.
Practical effects.
Yeah,
from the camera.
I like the film simulation stuff, and to like, I agree with you. Having a physical augmentation that's similar to like a filter but built in, really cool. You don't have to carry the filter with you, but I don't know, I feel like I'd be more inclined, for me personally, I'd be more inclined to do more like slow shutter stuff and having that as an option to like cut light.
Okay.
And then I can like lick my finger and rub the lens to get my Pro Mist effect.
Just pull out your little tub of Vaseline or whatever.
Exactly. There was a video or something that I was watching where somebody was talking about like practical effects with lenses, and they're like, yeah, I have this Fujifilm 18 to 55 that I dropped in water, like in a river, and it's never quite dried out right, and it's got like a weird like fogginess to it, and I love the effect, so I use that lens all the time.
I am not on that level.
That's basically this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes like in the theme of that segment that we have where like things were better when things were worse, sometimes you just gotta like, take your lens, rub it on some gravel, throw it in a bucket of water, and now it's better.
Yeah, it has more character.
I mean, there's that guy that we've shot with that no back filters, no front filters.
Yeah, no caps. You mean
no caps?
Yeah,
YOLO.
That's what the kids say. The kids say no cap. That's a phrase they use, and I think they must mean they're not putting caps on the backs of their lenses.
People say no cap.
They do.
In what context? Is it like YOLO?
I don't know what it means.
Is it? Is it like?
Don't ask me that.
It's like was it gear in, clutch out?
Something like that. If you're listening to this show and you know what no cap means, email us.
No cap.
We don't know. Maybe they just don't. They don't want to mess up their hair.
I think it's what you said. I think it's you got a bag full of lenses, no lens caps, no back caps. It's just going to slow you down.
Yeah. You want to get that shot quick. You got to pop that lens on there and go.
It's about living free and living once.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we're off to a good start today.
This is going really well. So, Ricoh GR3, Ricoh GR IIIx, exact same cameras, basically just swapped out the ND. I like it. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's nice to have an alternate option. I immediately went for the ND, but I probably would waffle back and forth on that just as bad as I waffle back and forth on everything else that I tried to buy.
It would be really hard to choose because, you can't change it out once you buy it. So,
Well, okay, so the GR3 is an 18 millimeter or like something like that, 18 millimeter ish lens. The GR IIIx is like a 26.2.
That's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, it's basically like, if you're thinking full frame, it's like 27 versus 40, which are two very common street photography focal lengths. You could get one in the ND and one in the HDF. Which one would you get in which?
Oh, I don't know. That's so hard to decide.
I mean, it's just focal lengths, Daniel.
I think I would get the 40 in ND and the 27 in the Pro Mist.
Why? Because I would do the exact opposite.
Well, one thing I can think of that I would do with the ND thing is getting something like a shot of a moving car, where you do the thing where like you track it while it's
Yeah.
moving, you get the blurry background.
That's always super cool.
And when I think about that, I think about using like maybe a slightly more punched in lens.
Sure.
So I guess that's where I'm coming from.
I'm thinking like landscape, like wide for the wide, and then more like portrait style shots for the closer. Not like portrait, but more of a person or a subject. And I think that I would want a softer look for that.
Okay. I could see that. I mean, you could just buy 4 cameras.
I mean, I would probably have to buy more than that because for the ND versions, I would want maybe like the street edition and the urban edition.
Oh, good point. Yeah, that way you can pick the one that matches your outfit.
I mean, they're so small, you could put one in every pocket.
I mean, you could buy 6 of these cameras and still just be at the cost of a Leica Q3.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I don't know why more people don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, you could carry all of them with you.
I wonder if there's a feature where you can just like hold multiple of them, take a picture, and it like stacks the photo.
Oh, that'd be like
just bring it into Lightroom later.
There you go. Yeah, like like how the sensor shift works on other cameras.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but this one's just like a Voltron of multiple GR3s.
Yes, a Voltron of multiple GR3s.
Man, if we were still doing the funny show names, that would be
yeah,
that would be in the running.
Just go ahead and put that one in there. All right, we're done with that topic.
Okay,
like so bad. All right. Okay, Sony, you may have heard of it, released a firmware update.
They did.
Or are releasing a firmware update later.
Yep, I saw this.
They announced a firmware update, which seems to be the trend now because Fujifilm announced a firmware update like a month ago.
I guess it's firmware season.
And I was like, man, I'm going to have Real Ace for this trip coming up. Maybe not. Who knows?
Well,
I don't know.
Just have to wait and see. April showers bring May firmware updates, I guess.
Yep. I have nothing to add there. Yep. 100% true, probably.
Well, what is this Sony firmware update?
All right. So they're issuing a firmware update for 3 cameras, I believe. The A1, the A7S3, and the A7 IV.
Okay.
And I've included a list of all of these additions here. I think the headline feature for all 3 cameras is the content authentication thing.
Yeah.
I think they call it like C2PA.
And we talked about that on some previous show because there was like a Leica camera that was supporting it.
Right. There is a Leica camera that supports it. That's right. It hasn't, and I think like maybe there's a Nikon, or they promised that they were going to. It's slowly coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sony is rolling it back out. And the C2PA thing, I had to double check what that stands for, but it's like Coalition of Content Provenance Authenticity. Ooh, that's hard. And I think it's weird that for Coalition of Content, they just said C2 instead of CC.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but
I could see C3, and so you don't have to say CCC, but C2 instead of CC, CCPA, C2PA. I don't know. Maybe that's better.
Yep. Is this basically like having purebred photos? Like, you have like all your papers for your photo and you know that it's a real picture?
Sure. Yeah.
That's what that feature is though, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what, yes.
Okay.
It is the way to digitally sign and authenticate your photos so that you know like when it was taken or if it was modified, and it's that authentication tag that kind of like carries with.
It's kind of good to see this coming because I feel like, I mean, we've all seen the AI stuff. We already know that there's a lot of things in question about that. And I mean, I don't know whether this feature is going to solve all those problems or not, but I guess I'm a little impressed to see them talking about it and putting it into cameras because I don't quite feel like we're at the point yet that it's a problem in the sense that people are taking pictures and saying like, no, this is a real photo. And then other people say, no, it's not. And like, it feels like this is anticipating a problem and a discussion that's going to happen, but it hasn't quite happened yet. And I guess it's surprising, but good to see them already putting it into cameras.
I guess like 2 things on that. One, I mean, we're less than a year out from whenever this started pushing, and it's really cool to see it actually coming. Whenever they announced it, I was like, oh, cool, we're going to see this in like 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, no, camera companies are pushing for it now. And I think part of the reason for that is journalism. Certain outlets like Associated Press they have hard requirements as far as, you can only like minorly like white balance adjust or whatever.
Right.
And you can't modify photos. And there was like that whole thing with the Princess Peach or something where I know I'm kidding. Where like they're like, oh, here's this picture, and then they found out later that it was modified, and they had to do like this stop order and
Good
take
point.
it down.
Yeah.
And it was this whole thing because they're so like official with all of their photo policy. And I think that I assume that these camera companies like Sony and Canon, Nikon are like, okay, our cameras are used by these professionals. If a rule comes into place that says you can't use a camera that's not C2PA, and we can beat Canon to it,
Yeah, it's a
then they're
competitive
gonna
advantage.
they're gonna have to only use our cameras.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a competitive advantage if, oh, well, if I'm picking between using an A1 or using a Nikon, whatever, like I'm going to pick the one that works with my news bureau's content
Yeah,
authenticity stuff.
for sure.
Makes sense.
But I also think it's something that people want. Like if you're an avid photographer and you're posting your stuff online, you want to make sure that it's yours.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I'd like to see Fuji add this for my camera, not because I need it right now, but it's more like I could see a future where this sort of thing really does matter. And sure, I'd like for my photos to be like authenticated as being real, I guess. I mean, there's no harm for it.
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense, and it's going to be great when it's ubiquitous, and we're quickly getting there, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
I think that whenever Leica rolled this out, they said that they were planning on like a separate hardware chip just to do the C2PA.
Interesting.
Whereas Sony isn't, and I'm wondering if it's one of those things where like when you flip it on, there's a performance hit.
Yeah,
Like maybe
it
impacts your burst rate, or does it write it after the fact? I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Curious what the implication's going to be.
Yeah.
Like we don't necessarily know.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a good question.
Yeah. So that's like one big feature. A few other things that kind of came through that, do I care about? Do I not care about? It looks like let's go through some of these A1 2 features first. They're adding breathing compensation, which I think is the one that most people complain about for the A1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because that's something that they didn't have originally, and then they started releasing cameras like the A7 IV that had it, but they didn't go back and add it to their older cameras, right? And so now they're doing that.
And I think that like they're just not used to doing this. They had to pull the A1 update. They like pushed it out, people update to it, and it was causing instability, and so they had to pull it.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's going to come out again in late April, maybe.
That's embarrassing.
I think that the A7S III and the A7 IV one are still currently live. Like you can update now. It does like wipe all your settings. Like it's a total new firmware. And so you have to like back up your settings and then do the upgrade and then bring your settings back, which is not a process that I'm familiar with because I'm used to it just saving all my settings.
Unless you take the battery out.
Yeah, I was going to make that same joke. Unless you take the battery out. The XH2S hasn't had that problem. It's just my X-T3 is like, I'm going to reset myself all the time, every time you swap the battery.
Yeah, I guess Fuji fixed that in the newer cameras.
Maybe I should update my firmware.
We have a shoot tomorrow. Don't do that.
Not for well, I guess we might use that camera. Okay, fine. I won't update the firmware. Anywho, they did some like enhancements on like touch playback and that sort of thing. They added some remote control and like FTP transfer features. They added the video streaming for like using it as a webcam, the 4K 30 UVC.
Nice.
So you can do 4K 30 out for webcam.
Yeah, that's perfect. You can buy a Sony A1 and use it as a webcam.
Yeah, when you say it that way, it makes a ton of sense. And then they added some monitor and app control support, so like waveform and false color, which I think is through that like Sony app.
Yeah, like
viewer thing.
You can use the app and connect over Wi-Fi and have like a little wireless monitor.
Yeah, for sure.
I never liked that kind. I'd rather just use like a Teradek or something because I just don't trust the Wi-Fi and it always seems a little janky.
Yeah,
but that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, A7S III. This is kind of the big one. They actually added like new frame rates and that sort of thing to the A7S III. They finally added DCI 4K, which is cool. I've always felt like it was weird that
it is weird that it never had that.
It's like, hey, look at these super sweet Sony cameras and all their, bad video, but like bad in the good way. And like you don't have True 24 and you can't set your shutter speed to exactly 180 and like you don't have DCI options. And now you have them. You have like DCI 4K, so you can get the 17:9 with true 4K resolution. You can set your shutter speed to 1/96, 1/48, and 1/24.
Cool.
And you get 24 frame per second video.
Yeah, that's nice.
Because I think it's like 23.97 is what it's currly you're enabled to do.
That's mostly what we shoot in, but it's cool to have the ability to do like true 24 if you want that.
For sure. I still haven't quite figured out like when I would want to do one versus the other. I know that the dropped frame is for like sound channels in broadcast, but if it's never going to hit the airwaves, then but like literally the airwaves. If it's most TV is like digital. Like they switched to digital antennas in like 2010. And so if it's a digital signal, is there a reason to do 23.97?
I don't know the answer to this, but that would be an interesting topic for us to put for a future episode of like what, like, you know, we always shoot in 59.94 versus 60. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if the answer is to talk about like NTSC and frame rates and stuff, but like why would you pick one over the other? We should dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile. I know why it was a thing.
Yeah.
And like because of the frequency of the literally the frequency of the electricity, and then you had to make room for the audio channel. Like I know that whole story.
Yeah.
But
now that we're in this world where like we make stuff for online, like why do you pick one over the other?
Right. Like it's just a number. Like this display has variable refresh rate or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, interesting.
Let's figure it out.
Okay, fine. We'll dig into that, and then everyone can set their A7S3s to 24 because now they're gonna have the Fuji problem, which is you're staring at this list of stuff and you go, do I pick 24? Do I pick 23.97?
Yep.
Daniel said we were shooting in 24, so I guess I'm gonna set it to 24. Daniel, how come all your footage says 23.97, but all my footage says 24, and I'm having to like drop frames whenever I sync all the footage?
Anytime I say 24, you should just assume it's 23 point whatever. I see you shaking your head.
Yeah,
but
just shaking my head.
Yep. It's like 24 nominal.
Anyway.
They added some other stuff in that firmware too. There's some time code sync stuff.
Which is cool. It's not I mean, time code sync compatibility?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if that means that this is the first time they've had that, or I mean, I don't know the details of what that means, but
yeah, little less familiar with having not shot with an A7S3 very frequently.
Yep.
/ ever. I don't know. I can't remember. Honestly, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, they improved in playback support. They added all the same, features that we talked about for the A1. So pretty cool. Pretty cool to finally see, breathing compensation and these new frame rates and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
I don't know if there's really much else to dig into here. The list is really, really long. Like,
yeah, I mean, it seems like a pretty big update for those cameras. So, I mean, if if you're using one of those cameras, this is definitely something to go, get if it's available for your camera, or keep an eye on it if you're using an A1. It seems like a good update.
I'm reading all these other features, and I don't want to read them out loud.
Yeah, there's too many of them, man.
A lot of this stuff is just so. Like it's a nice to have, and you read the feature and you go, oh, that's nice. I like that. They fixed the folder problem where it was capping out the number of photos or videos I can stick into a folder. Great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it doesn't make for good radio for us to talk about it, but if you are a person who uses that camera, it'll probably make you happy.
For sure. It does feel like they're pushing with a lot of these features. They're pushing a lot of the Sony Creator Cloud stuff and FTP transfer and like ways to wirelessly get things off of your camera.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of features related to that interconnectivity between your camera and the internet / phone.
Well, and we're seeing Fuji do some of that stuff too with the
camera to cloud.
Yeah, camera to cloud. And so, I mean, clearly these manufacturers are just seeing where the world's going, and everybody's wanting to make content for online, and they all these cloud workflows are a bigger and bigger deal. So it makes sense that they're doing it.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point where somebody sticks a modem into a camera?
I mean, yeah, I could totally see that happening. Like, on one hand, Apple has never put a cell modem in the MacBook, which, just kills a lot of people. But
they're running on the same like ARM architecture now, and they still haven't done it. I feel like they're waiting for that to make their own.
Nah, maybe they are. But you can buy an iPad that has it, right? And a lot of people do that because it's super useful. I could see it happening, but at the same time, cameras are really heat constrained a lot of times and space constrained. And, those two go together a lot. And so, I mean, I don't know if we're there yet technologically, I guess. Because it seems like anytime they have extra heat capacity or space, they're using it to add features that improve, like the actual camera itself, which, I mean, that's the trade-off I would want them to make.
This is why they put the battery grips integral to the cameras so that they can add those extra power hungry features or add extra batteries.
That would be the reason to, or do like Fuji and have a thing that costs $1,000 to do it.
Sure.
If the Fuji thing had a built-in cell radio, I would think it was potentially worth what they want to charge for it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that's probably worth $1,000 if you stick a cell radio
it's
in
at
it.
least a meaningful feature. Whereas like without that, like really, guys, charging that much?
Sony needs to build like a beefcake version of the A7R5.
Yeah, make it the size of every other company's camera.
Just like so much extra camera, like a double chin size grip and a fan, and then put a cell modem in it, and then it can just like stream your pictures straight off.
It'd be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could just like watch YouTube on the screen too.
I mean, why not? Anyway,
that'd be pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah. So that's it.
Neat.
So, and then to, segue and continue our conversation on camera companies. This is our fourth week. I think
it's our fourth week because we started with OM System, and then we did Canon,
right?
And then we did Panasonic.
That's right. And so
now we're here.
Since we're already talking about Sony, let's talk about Fuji.
Perfect.
I've just been waiting for this one, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, this show, we know our audience, right? Like the two that people are waiting on are Fuji and Nikon.
Well, yeah, for sure. Nikon's going to get crazy.
Yeah, it is. But today, like there's still some people going crazy for Fuji. So,
well, for sure. I mean, I feel like I have a brand.
I think you do,
and it's very Fuji centric. Okay, so I don't even know where to start here. I'm just going to start with my first bullet point, which is I feel like, okay, so for the other companies, we kind of were like, oh, where are they coming from? Where are they going? Blah, blah, blah. Fuji. How come they can never keep up?
It does kind of feel that way, doesn't it? Like they were a little slow on the autofocus train, and it does just kind of feel like they can't quite get there.
Like just even so much in the recent years, the whole X-Trans, X series cameras and digital cameras that they've been making since, they think they started in like 2010. It's all been great. Everyone loves them. Everyone. There's no exception. Loves them. And it feels like the demand's been there. They're not like competing in like the prime market of full frame where they're going to make all the cells and become, Canon sized or Sony sized.
Yeah.
I don't see a world where Fujifilm becomes what Sony became, where they step up and Sony's like, we're going to become the second or first most sold camera brand, and just out of nowhere like dethrones Nikon.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening for Fuji.
No, I don't think so either. It seems like it has to be that they just don't invest enough in the development. We love the stuff they come out with, so not saying they're not doing a good job, but it feels like these things ultimately have to come down to money, and it just seems like they just, compared to a Sony or compared to a Nikon, and even Nikon may not be the best example, but like, let's say compared to Sony, it just feels like they don't have as much like wood behind the arrow, as they say.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They've put themselves in a situation where they said, we want to focus our market on like these street photographers and the colors and all this stuff, and then we want to focus on this high-end market. And so they've split the gap. They have these medium format cameras and these APS-C cameras, and so it's almost like they're saying, we're going to leave the meat of the market for everybody else, and we're purposely going to take the leftovers or take the things on the outside and address all of these edge markets and just own that whole space. And it feels like that has a limited market cap, and they're only going to be able to grow so much doing that. But they put themselves in a situation where that's where they sell their cameras, and it feels like because of it, they don't have the enough revenue possibilities to grow their camera division in the same way as like Canon or Sony.
Yeah, that's probably true, and all of this stuff eventually comes down to business. And, they've got their Instax stuff that's like super popular.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have, the X mount cameras and GFX. And I'm sure you have to be able to make a business case to invest. And with something like the X series cameras, because they're kind of playing on the margins of the market, they can't justify investing that like compared to something like in Instax where that, like they could probably always justify, building new Instax cameras. So maybe it's some of that.
Yeah, it does feel like they're doing a good job addressing that lower end of the market, but I don't want to see Fujifilm be like a commodity camera.
Yeah, I agree.
I would much rather see Fujifilm be more like a cheaper version of Leica, and thought about kind of in that more of a prestige. And I feel like that's kind of where they see themselves. I mean, you watch a Fuji event and they're just like they're talking about the art and the photography and like all this sort of
Well,
thing.
and if you're buying a Fuji camera over something like a Sony, I feel like it is because you care about the the filmic look, and I mean that's what they sell on, so it makes sense.
It does seem like, though, that with the way that they position themselves in the market, they're never going to be considered, like the professional camera.
Hmm.
Like you don't see too many, sports or wedding photographers shooting on a Fuji.
No, you don't.
And
You see all of them with a Fuji as like their fun camera.
right, it's like this is what I shoot with when I want to enjoy photography or that sort of thing. And what for my professional work, I'm going to shoot with these other cameras. And I always find that kind of interesting about Fuji because like we do some like professional work, and I still gravitate to Fuji because it's like, I love the colors, I love the like what you get for the money, and then it like also the photography side, like all that other piece appeals to me. And so it's like for the huge bulk of just shooting for the fun of it, like that's great for me.
Yeah. It's funny too because I mean the XH2S is legitimately still a really really good camera, and I mean there aren't that many cameras with stacked sensors. It's one of the few, and I mean everything it does with frame rate and bit rate and rolling shutter performance and all that is I mean it's pretty close to top tier for hybrid mirrorless cameras.
It holds its own with everything else, but it feels like the struggle of like getting over the hump of just being Fuji, and it's kind of weird for that.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like whenever I say I feel like Fuji can't keep up, their cameras, at least in the last like especially in the last 4 or 5 years, they can't keep them in stock.
But
Like
yeah,
you,
that's a big problem. Like we were talking at the beginning of the show about the XT5. I mean, that is one of their flagship photo cameras right now.
it's been out for 2 years.
Yeah, and
there's no reason you shouldn't be able to buy it.
yeah, you can go to B&H, Adorama, any of our local store, any of those places, and you can't buy it.
Yeah,
Why not?
you just can't. It's people want these things. They want these Fuji cameras, especially the retro looking ones. And you just can't get them. You couldn't buy the X100 forever. Can't buy the XT5, and it's just really frustrating that like the market's there, but they can't keep up because they can't invest the money into it to keep up because they're on like the edges of this business. And it's like I don't understand why they can't scale to it. And I don't know if it's just like a staffing thing or a company culture thing, but it's like that with their cameras, and it's like that with the firmware. They had this whole Kaizen thing in like the mid tens, whatever, 2014 to 2017, 2018. And they were coming out with these firmware updates very regularly. And then they started slowly dropping off. And they announced a new firmware update like last month. Hey, we're actually bringing all this stuff to the X-Trans 5 series of cameras.
Yeah.
Super pumped about it. It's been like a month or 6 weeks and it still hasn't come out.
And there's no visibility. I think they said spring or Q1.
Yeah,
or
and we made
something.
jokes about that being June 20th.
Yeah, that's right.
And
it's starting to seem like it might be.
And like I get it. Software is hard and you have limited resources. And it feels like those limited resources are what Fuji's bumping up against. And it's like people want Fuji cameras, and the growth feels like from the outside looking in, it looks like the growth is there and that the demand is there to see Fuji like boom as a company a little bit. And it seems like they just are unable to scale with it.
Yeah. And it's frustrating for us too, because it's, when you have one of their cameras and that the foundation is really good, the hardware is really good and all that, it's just frustrating when it feels like the software isn't quite there. And you can see how they could just do a few things that would make it so much better.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough. It's like, that's always like the tough thing with Fuji is I love those cameras. There's a lot of paper cuts, and I would love to see them kind of more reach their potential. And and I don't know if it's just a matter of it doesn't it doesn't matter like how many XT5s they sell. It's always going to be like not a whole lot,
Yeah.
and they've sold 50 times more in stacks, and it just isn't worth scaling up that part of the business, or what.
Yeah,
I
but
just
it is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, or a, like that. It's that kind of thing where, you know, sure, maybe they're not selling that many, but you just have to wonder if they really invested in it, and if they kept them on the shelves, how much
Mhm.
bigger would that market be?
Yeah, I don't know. I just I would like to see Fuji grow. I don't want to see them like give up or disappear as a camera
Yeah,
company. I
I
think
agree.
that they provide enough unique benefit to the market as a player. Like they are doing something different.
Yeah.
So I want to keep seeing them do that different
Hmm.
thing.
Well, and I think we also have to mention that there's some cameras that they have that are looking really conspicuous for not having been updated.
Yeah, yeah. They used to have a ton of camera lines, just like everybody else. They've been slowly trimming it back.
Hmm.
And there are still some lines that are on the X-Trans 4 or X-Trans 3
Well,
system.
like the XT30. They came out with the XT30, which has the same sensor as the XT3, which is that X-Trans 3 or X-Trans 4?
X-Trans 4.
And so they have that. And then they came out with the XT32.
Right.
And no, I think the XT30 had an is that an X-Trans 3, and then the XT32 is an X-Trans
They were
4?
the same. They were
Okay, it was
basically
the same.
exactly the same. It was just that they made a minor change, and so there was a skew jump, and they had to update
That's
the
right. And I
increments
think
somehow.
that was a COVID thing or something. But
Yeah.
that camera is pretty old now, and it was a pretty popular camera. It's like a really compact interchangeable lens camera.
It's one of those cameras for your camera, and there are a lot of like XT4, XT3 users that
Mhm.
also had an XT30 because it was like this is my travel
Yeah.
camera. It's so small and so
Yeah.
tiny.
Well, and I mean, I guess what I'm getting at too is that like the XT30 came out, kind of like as a brother to the XT3.
Right.
And then the XT4 came out, and there wasn't an XT40. And
Right.
now we're already on the XT5. So, like, the obvious question is, are we getting an XT40 or an XT50?
I think that they're going to jump over. They're going to go straight to XT50. I was surprised they didn't release one when they came out with the S10, S20. Sorry, the
Yeah.
S20.
But I mean, I guess that's what I'm like. That's really conspicuous that they haven't updated that camera, and they have several lines like that. That's just, it does make you wonder, what are they doing? What
They're just very slow with it. It feels like. I think that an XT50 with that 40 megapixel sensor in it would be amazing.
Yeah.
And it seems like that XT double digit number has been very similar to the X100 line. And now that X100 is out, I could see the XT50 being an X100 with without the lens. So like an
Some have IBIS.
$1,100, sure, $1,100 IBIS, that size
Sure.
retro style camera
That'd be
with
pretty
an
cool.
interchangeable lens mount.
That'd be great.
I think it's gonna be really popular when it comes out, but like it has to come out, and then they're just not gonna be able to keep them on the shelf.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be the same deal.
And then there's also the X Pro 4, which is, maybe the most Fuji of Fuji cameras, where it doesn't even have a back screen.
Wait, so that X Pro 3 is the current one.
Yes.
And haven't updated it yet. The
Yep.
X Pro 3 was built on the same platform as like the XT3.
Yeah.
And that camera is so cool.
Well, like I said, it's the most Fuji of Fuji cameras because it really tries to encourage you to just use the viewfinder, and it's got that whole thing going on.
What is that camera that we talked about a little while back where it was like the Pixie camera where it doesn't have a screen at all,
Yeah.
and then you take your pictures? I think that's such a fun idea of like I have this, like I want to just like see the world and take the picture and not be like chimping or doing digital, like just I want it to be like a film camera without having a film camera and having to do all the development.
Right.
Because Daniel, that is a huge pain.
So you've said.
Anyway, I think that like the X Pro 3 is so cool for that reason that it, like you can hide it all away. Or if you want, you can bring it back and like you can fold out the screen and have it. You can turn up the electronic viewfinder and use it,
Sure.
but you don't have to. And it's so cool. And I don't know if it's too niche or what, but like we've been wanting an X Pro 4 for years.
I've been seeing people asking about that online for a long time now, and so it's just really conspicuous that they have all these cameras that they're not updating.
The platform change to the X Trans 5 with that 40 megapixel sensor, I think is like it's an inflection point for Fuji, and I feel like 40 megapixels is an amazing resolution for APS-C, and they're like there's no one else that's doing that level of resolution in that small of size. And I think like maybe some people are confused by it. They're like, does that mean it's like 1.5 less resolution? And it's like, no, it's like literally 40 megapixels.
Yeah.
And I feel like it legitimizes a lot of their camera line with like, look at all this quality you can get. You don't have to have full frame.
Yeah. I mean, it does, right? Because, if you want to shoot on something like an A7R series camera, like an A7R4 or something, I mean, I think the new one is like 61 megapixels maybe.
Yeah.
But, if you look at something like an A7R4, I think that's a lot. I think it's like 43.
I think those are both like 62.
Okay.
But everything before that's like 43. Even the Z8's like 42 or 43.
Yeah, yeah. And so I mean the 40 megapixels of something like the XT5 is pretty competitive with that, and the XT5 is like half the price.
Yeah, it's like what your trade-off is it's literally a stop. You're getting a stop more noise. So if you're shooting at ISO 100, it's like shooting at 160. If you're shooting at 800, it's like shooting at 1600. So like you get a stop more noise, but the noise looks good because of X Trans. Lol. I believe it, but whatever. And like you get a stop more noise, but that's it. And like you're getting a smaller package for that.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, that's like totally worth the trade-off.
Yeah.
And like that's the trade-off that Fuji's made. It's just, I guess the point that I'm getting at is like X Trans 5 is an inflection point, and it feels like maybe they were waiting.
Could be.
Let's not update the XT30. Let's not update the X Pro 3 because X Trans 5 is coming, and we want 40 megapixel sensors in that, and we don't want to have to deal with another product line because that's just going to push us back even farther because we are so slow and we can't do anything in a reasonable amount of time.
Could be. I mean, hopefully that's what it is, because if that's the case, then okay, what's stopping them now? You'd think they'd be able to release all this stuff now.
Yeah, for sure. So like to me, I think they have. I feel like they have to do an XT50 and they have to do an X Pro 4. I feel like those are unique enough cameras that they make sense.
Yeah.
Do you think they need an XE5?
That one's a little bit trickier because that's basically it's a smaller XT camera, like a smaller XT50.
Yeah. So like to kind of dig a little bit into like for those who don't know, who are not like this deep into Fuji, sorry. It's like they had and I'm actually starting to forget some of them. They had like the maybe it was XF, but like XF and XE, which were, you have like your range style, and then you have your viewfinder over the top style.
Yeah.
And of the rangefinder style, it was the X Pro series, and then the XE was right below it.
Right.
And then for your over the top style, it was like the XT and then like the XT30 style.
Yeah.
And then they have their more like DSLR style bodies, which are like your XH and your XS series.
Right.
And so like I totally think that they need the XT50, the over the top viewfinder standard like SLR style camera. I don't know if they need the rangefinder XE5 style.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people that would want it. I know I've seen people online, wanting a new XE series camera, but as slow as they are, I almost wonder, maybe they should just let that one go and just focus on, keeping a smaller number of lines up to date.
Yeah, like if having less SKUs enables them to produce more XT5s, I'm all for it.
Yeah, or just keeping those cameras current, does that get us to an XT50 faster?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
So I think that's where we are though on Fuji right now. For X Trans 5, like we're waiting on the X Pro, we're waiting on the XT50.
Yeah.
I don't think we're really waiting on anything else, but we are starting to butt up against their traditional cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So XT3 was 2018, XT4 was 2021, XT5 was 2018 was XT3, and then 2022 was XT5, and then XT4 was smack in the middle.
Yeah.
So if you're counting the years, 2025 next year should be an XT6.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they can't even make XT5. What are we going to do? We haven't even finished the rollout of the other X Trans 5 products. what does that look like? And the X-T4 was an X-Trans 4 camera also, just they added the IBIS, and then they made it bulkier and switched the batteries and that sort of thing.
It's not always the case that a new number means a new sensor generation.
Right. So, and I'm not expecting that at all. I think we're going to be in X-Trans 5 for another 3 years.
Yeah, I think
before there's another jump, and they're just going to keep releasing cameras with the same processor and the same sensor technology. And it's just we're waiting on them to release the versions that we want.
Yeah.
So, like, even though an XT6 could possibly come out like late next year, I don't think there's a reason to not buy an XT5 now.
I agree. I mean, obviously, I agree.
Except that, except that maybe they'll come out with a new film simulation and not bring it to that camera.
It's possible. I'm hoping that as they get more of their line on XT5, I mean, it's always kind of, or on X-Trans 5, it's always kind of been Fuji's thing that, you know, you can buy the same camera in different form factors, but the guts are pretty similar.
Yep.
And I keep wanting that to prove out to be, you know, well, they can all get the new firmware updates and, you know, they can all get new film simulations. And we've seen very limited success with that so far, but I keep hoping that'll happen.
I still have a lot of heartburn about not getting classic neg on my XT3.
Yeah. It felt like when you bought the XT3, they had been talking about that Kaizen stuff. And I think on the XT2, there had been some pretty big successes.
Oh, they brought like 120 FPS video to the XT2.
Yeah. And so it was like this big promise. And then, you know, you just had bad timing with that because it feels like when the XT3 came out is kind of when they started falling off on that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the camera's still really good.
Yeah, I know you're still happy with it, but it's just, it'd be nice if they would update it with stuff like that.
For sure. Okay, let's talk about the other side, which, like, I'm in the APS-C Fuji world, and so I don't like the medium format stuff. Little less talky about, but last year was a big year for medium format for Fuji.
Yeah, because they came out with the
X100 the second.
Not the X100 the second.
Sorry, the GFX 100 the second.
Yep.
And there is a rumor that they may come out with the GFX 100S the second.
Which, do you know what the difference is between the 100 and the 100S? Like, is the S smaller?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what the difference is, but in telling you that, I think this isn't going to happen. So the X100, the GFX 100 came out, and it's like their 102 megapixel whatever, and has the battery grip built in and all this sort of thing, removable eye piece, and, you know, whole 9 yards, fancy pants, $10,000 camera. The GFX 100S was a smaller version of that, didn't have the battery grip, and maybe like a few less features, but it was the same 102 megapixel sensor. When they came out with the Deuce, which I say without laughing, they basically, it feels like they merged the lines. They split the difference in the price. They dropped like $3,000 off the price of that camera, and they took away the built-in battery grip, and now it has you can add the battery grip later.
So it's almost like what they released as the Deuce is basically a GFX 100S.
Yeah, essentially, it's like this is the one that people are going to buy anyway, and so like just make one camera.
Yeah, so it does kind of feel like that's what happened.
I don't see a reason for the GFX 100S Mark II to exist.
I think you're probably right.
But I do see a world where GFX 50R Mark II comes out.
And that's a lower megapixel count, right?
That's the 50 megapixel, which is it's a smaller body. It's much more like what you would expect out of a mirrorless camera. It has much faster read rates because it's only 50 megapixels, but you're still getting that almost medium format look.
Yeah.
Like, one point was like 0.71 is the crop. So, like you're getting another stop of light, another stop of dynamic range, even more.
Right.
I'm more interested in the idea of a 50R. The 100 Mark II, the second, had all these promises. And at the end of the day, it's still a 102 megapixel sensor, and you can only read it so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would love to see all of the things that they were trying to do with the GFX 100 come to a GFX 50 and have it actually do those things. Because it's like really cool how, like, okay, here's this giant sensor. Look at all these different vision circles. This is a Premista, and there's, a 6.5 and Super 35 and full frame, and like pick your poison, and then like you can do whatever. And that whole thing is a disaster as far as like
it's just confusing.
Which ones work. But you can do more with less megapixels. because you don't like if you're gonna shoot a 1:1 8K image, that's 42 megapixels, and so you're gonna be like you're gonna be like APS-C cropped on a GFX 100 camera.
Right. Good point.
But on a 50, you could probably shoot full frame at 8K if it had that resolution and it would work.
Yeah.
So I think that like as a medium format video camera, if they took all that goodness and could make a 50 work, I think it'd be really cool.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
Haven't seen too many rumors on it, but I feel like the rumors about the GFX 100S2 are probably a GFX 50R2.
I think that probably makes sense, just given where they positioned the Deuce.
Yeah, for sure. The other rumor that's out there is that Sony, and this is a pretty solid one, that Sony has this new 247 megapixel sensor that's medium format. And that people are like, oh, it's for security or industrial applications. So is the 102 megapixel that's in the Hasselblad and in the GFX now. It feels like to me that Sony isn't necessarily getting into medium format. I think this sensor is for the GFX and for the Hasselblad.
Interesting. I mean, that probably makes sense for Sony. I can't picture them making a whole new camera line, but if they can sell the sensors to Fuji, why wouldn't they?
For sure. We've been talking about, full frame closing the gap on resolution with medium format and with the extra speed that you get out of those smaller full frame sensors. Why would you ever shoot medium format? Like, you're going to get better autofocus and all this stuff. If we see 247 come to medium format, there's a reason for it right there. It's like now you're getting another 150 megapixels.
I'd be so curious to see what kind of processing power they had to put into that thing to get any kind of reasonable performance out of it.
It's going to be a collaboration with Apple, and it's going to have an M6 chip in it whenever it comes out.
I mean, it feels like that camera could end up being really bulky and having like multiple processors, or each one does a quarter of the frame or something.
I mean, there was that Olympus camera that had dual processors in it last generation. It's been done before.
Yeah. I mean, it's 240 megapixels is a lot of data.
It's a lot of megapixels.
Yeah.
So I think that's coming. I think that's like probably 3, 4, or 5 years out, but I think that's the next step for a medium format.
That'd be pretty cool.
Also, there's supposed to be a monochrome version.
Of course.
Does that remind you of any companies?
It kind of does.
Yeah. We haven't seen a new Leica S medium format camera for like 4 years. And people wondered if like Leica was giving up on medium format. I mean,
might just be waiting on this.
Waiting on that monochrome. I mean, if anyone's going to do it, if anyone's going to come out with a monochrome only medium format camera,
absolutely.
They sell it to 8 people, and it costs $20,000. That's got Leica written all over it.
It really does. Yep.
All right, let's talk about lenses for like 2 seconds.
Okay.
So current lens roadmap, the one that is projected to come out this year is the replacement for the 18-55 kit zoom, which is a really good kit lens.
Yeah, but the rumor is not great, right? And didn't we talk about it recently?
We talked. Okay. Link to old episode. This is the 16-50 f2.8 to f4.8. Weird variable range. Cool that it's wider. Weird that it's shorter. I don't know. Just go listen to that other episode.
Yep.
I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere. But you're looking at the lens lineup. They have so many primes. They have a pretty solid coverage from 8mm to 600mm. You have most every lens here, and really they're just in refresh mode. I don't know how many new like lens types there are for Fuji. I kind of have a wish list, but I wanted to see your thoughts on what you want from Fuji as far as the lenses.
I mean, to me, the biggest thing that I see missing is I'd like to see them update to 16-55, where it's like the pro version of the standard zoom.
I want to see them. So we've been seeing a few companies, Sony, Canon, Tamron, come out with these like different ranges. Like Tamron has that 35 to 150, which is kind of cool. And then Canon has that 28 to 70 f2.
Yeah.
I want to see that. I want to see an f2 version of a standard zoom for
that'd be great.
Film.
Yeah, it would be great. I would maybe be interested in having IBIS in there, or OIS for lens, because that's one of the reasons that turned me off of the 16-55 is it doesn't have OIS.
Yeah, it's like if you want OIS in one of their lenses, you would kind of have to get pushed into one of their like f4 style lenses, because like 16 to 80.
I'm sure it's because f2.8 OIS doesn't fit in the box.
Yeah, for sure. It's got to be that. It's got to be that compact size. I mean,
Yep.
you're not buying full frame. It's got to be smaller.
Yep.
I feel like they gotta push up against that a little bit for give people some really fast options.
Well,
like,
that's
don't just give
that's
up.
the point of having like a pro thing and not. I mean, nobody expects the 50 to 140 to be the same size as like your little travel lens. You know,
Right.
like, you just accept that some people want a bigger lens that has more capability.
Yeah, it's like some people want to do pro work with the Fuji camera.
Yep.
They need the pro lenses. They need the lenses that can do it. And if you're only marketing to the street photographer, then you're never going to get your 35 1.0 or your f2 standard zoom.
Yeah.
And I think there's a market for those things.
I think so too.
I would hope that Tamron and Sigma might address that market at least. Like, I would love to see, one of them come out with like a 23 to 75 or like a 28 to 70.
That'd be an
That's
interesting
f2.
range.
Or see Sigma re-release the 18 to 35 1.8 for mirrorless.
Man, that was a really good lens. I had the EF mount one back when I had the GH5, and that was an awesome lens.
Yeah, that's like one of those cult lenses that everybody used for a period of time, and it's just kind of like died off.
Yeah.
It feels like Sigma's scared to bring it back. They're worried that it won't be everything that the other one was.
It's too OP. The F1.8 was just killer. I loved having, especially on the GH5, so I had a speed booster, so it's like 1.3.
There are very few 1.8 zooms, and I bet that there's just more money for Sigma in the full frame market.
Probably true.
And they can't really make a 1.8 full frame version of that lens, so they just don't want to do it.
Yeah, that's probably the case.
But I don't know, just make the APS-C version.
Yeah.
Come on, Sigma, do it.
I mean, because for the 18 to 35 was APS-C,
right?
And so it's like all you have to do is change the mount.
But that lens is kind of huge.
Yeah, it is. It's big, but it'd be pretty nice.
If they redesigned it, it could be smaller.
Yeah,
because of that flange distance.
That's true. Yeah,
just saying.
It was a good video lens. I never used it for photos, but it was a good video lens.
You sold it, right?
I did.
Yeah. And not to me.
No, not to you. I think I offered it to you and you didn't want it. Just like that monitor that you're not going to buy from me.
Yeah, that checks out. I want a new 16mm 1.4 LMWR. They came out
so that you can buy that lens a third time?
Yes. They came out with the 18. They came out with the 33. They came out with the 23.
Mm-hmm.
I want the weather-sealed linear motor in the 16mm.
So what would you be getting there? You'd be getting weather sealing, which you do not have in the current one, and just faster, smoother focus?
Right. The 23 and the 33 in those LMWR editions are like they have less chromatic aberration. They were just so sharp and incredible.
Mm-hmm.
The linear motors are really fast. Like they're so much better with the new autofocusing system out of those Fuji cameras. And I don't know if I said it, they're weather sealed. They dropped the focus clutch, but I'm okay with that because the focus clutch doesn't really work with the XH2 how you would expect it, which is really frustrating. I want all of those features in the last remaining original Prime.
Yeah.
They had the 16, the 23, and 35, all with the focus clutches, and they've replaced the 35 with the 33. They replaced the 23 with the 23. I guess they just replaced the 16 with an 18, but they already had an 18 f2 and an 18. So where's the 16?
Yeah.
16 is that much wider. I want the 16 LMWR.
It's a little conspicuous that they haven't done that.
Make it a 1.2. Let's get crazy.
There you go.
That's what I want from Sigma, is I want Sigma to start coming out with 1.2 versions of Fuji's lenses.
It'd be cool to have that trade-off, even if it's a little bit bigger, and doesn't have an aperture ring.
Give me that 30% more light.
Yeah.
Come on.
For sure.
Come on.
I like the 1.2 on the Viltrox 75.
Yeah.
If I'm shooting in low light, I always think about using that lens.
That 75 1.2, that's a good lens.
It is good.
That's a really good lens.
I feel like it lived up to the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That one and the 13mm 1.4, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really great third-party lenses.
Yeah.
Anywho, I put down here that your wish list for what you want from Fuji is a Lumix S1H Mark II.
If Fuji came out with a box version of the XH2S, I would have bought it instead of the one that I got.
If Fuji came out with the Lumix S1H Mark II, I would have bought that.
I bought the X-T5 recently, so I'm not divesting from Fuji for the photo side, but it's not wrong to say that that's kind of what I'm looking for is an S1H Mark II. And the reason is I feel like Fuji is not fully committing to the video market. They have the XH2S that has a lot of the core features you would want, but then they're missing stuff like true timecode support, like with all the systems. They don't have vector scope built in. They don't have shutter angle, all that stuff. Panasonic does those things really well. And, as much as I like the artistic aspects of Fuji and how small their cameras are and their kind of philosophy of how cameras work, I think all that makes a lot of sense. For doing pro video stuff, those features seem like they're missing. And because of everything we've talked about today, it's just really hard to picture Fuji taking that step and committing and adding all that stuff in. I mean, we've seen some small steps toward this where, they're doing some good things, but it's just really hard to picture them getting there. And I feel like Panasonic's going to release something this year that just blows it out of the water so much that it'd be hard to keep waiting for those things to come to the XH2S.
Oh, for sure. Like if in my dreams, the S1H Mark II is just like the camera to be all cameras.
Yeah.
For video. But on that video subject, like they've said that they're going to bring a lot of these, here's these features that we're bringing. They announced a lot of really cool video features with the GFX 100.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like waiting with bated breath. Like, are they going to bring all of these things? I made a list, Daniel, and I put under firmware. Not all of these are coming, but I want all these features on the list are in the GFX 100 and not in the XH2S right now.
Yeah.
And the XH2S is a better video camera in every regard compared to the GFX 100.
So give us this list.
So you got Ricoh Ace, which maybe that's not a video feature. They have a pixel shift multi-shot. Don't have that in the APS-C cameras. Yep. Where's my multi-shot big pictures? You got video touch to track. They added a new manual focus map assist, which is really cool for like manual focusing and not just like peaking. Recording to an SSD.
Really want that one.
Yeah. Waveform, vector scope, D-range priority in F-Log2. So even more, like you can do the extended dynamic range within the log profile.
Oh, that's cool.
So like adding more dynamic range, pixel mapping, red frame recording, like all those things.
Yeah.
It's, I don't even think I wrote down, they had like the wireless timecode stuff.
Yeah. But that's not this, like I want to be able to plug in
you want real
something
time
like a Deity TC1 and have it work properly with timecode. They don't have that.
Yeah. So like that's my wish list on top of those features is I want LUT support. I want to be able to stick an F-Log2 to whatever the heck I want LUT into the camera and have it be able to bake it in.
Yeah.
And I want, like you said, real timecode support. And it's like, this is a lot of stuff to shove into a camera. But I feel like if you want to be, here's our video camera, this thing competes.
Yeah.
You need this stuff.
Well, here's another little one. I came from the GH5 to the XH2S, and I could not believe that although you can monitor, like you can do an F-Log2 to normal, preview thing on the screen on the camera, which was new to the XH2S. They didn't even have that before in the XT3. Over HDMI, you can't do that. And so if you're using an external monitor, you have to load a LUT on the monitor because in the camera, you can't do the F-Log view assist over HDMI.
Yeah, super frustrating.
My GH5 from whatever year that was, 2017, that camera could do it.
Yeah. Other things that those cameras can do, you can do the touch point exposure, where you can say, like, tell me the exposure at this point.
Oh, man. When we were shooting that TV show, I think I showed you that feature when we were doing that. That was so useful.
That would have been clutch for the music video we just shot, where it's like, I don't have waveform. I'm looking at a histogram that's not helpful, and my screen is telling me, like the exposure meter is telling me that I'm 4 stops over, but I'm not 4 stops over because it's looking at the stupid white walls.
Yep.
And like if I could like set the point and tell me the exposure at this point, that would be super helpful. Or waveform would have been super helpful.
Yep.
And it's like, don't have that, don't have shutter angle, the HDMI thing. It's just like there's so many of these little paper cuts that could make the XH2S so much more competitive.
And I think they've said that some of those are coming. They've kind of, I feel like the red frame recording, I feel like maybe it was promised in that upcoming update.
Yeah. So the red frame's coming. They're bringing the waveforms.
Touch to
they're
track.
Bringing the touch to track. They're bringing Real Ace. Like they're bringing some of these things.
They say they are, but for one thing, it's like, well, where is it? But
June 20th.
You also have to wonder, are they ever going to get to this other stuff?
I think the like XH3S is whenever they're going to get to the rest of that stuff, and it's just never going to come.
Yeah,
and it's going to be like another year and a half, and then we'll see it come out in a new camera.
Yeah, but again, they're just like following behind everybody else, because who knows what Panasonic's going to come out with by then. Sony,
for sure. It's like it's catch up, right? It's like they have to release that and more in order to stay competitive.
Yeah,
and it's like this is like my biggest fear with Fuji is that they see their market with like the street photographers and like the small cameras and the travel cameras and the Instax and the X100s, and they're like, let's make that our APS-C market. And maybe they just give up on video.
Yeah,
like it feels like they keep pushing it. I mean, they have these amazing video features in their camera. They keep sticking them in there because it sells cameras, and it's like either commit or don't.
Yeah.
And I'm really worried that in 4 years from now, they're just gonna have to be like, yeah, you know what? We tried the video thing with 2 versions, and it just didn't really take, and it's not working for us. We're gonna focus on these other stuff.
Well, the problem is, I could see that making sense because it, the video stuff is a little bit at odds with the rest of their value proposition. But it does kind of feel like another self-fulfilling prophecy, where maybe the reason it doesn't take off is because they're not committing, they're not going all the way.
Yeah, it's like they're hedging instead of committing.
Yeah.
And I guess like that's what I want to see from Fuji. I want to see them like really commit, like get these features into these cameras, because like they're making cool stuff and they're doing cool stuff.
Well, and it's funny that you and me are saying this, because we're both pretty invested, in Fuji's ecosystem, and we both really like their cameras, and we're the ones that are kind of unsure about where they're going and whether 4 years from now is their path going to be aligned with our path. Like, I don't know. And I know it feels like we should be like solidly in their target market, and so it's a little weird.
I know that it's like a whole to do whenever you have a huge investment of lenses to like switch systems and that sort of thing, and like you have to sell all your lenses and whatever. I'm not scared.
Yeah.
Like if Fuji gives up on their video line, I mean, like maybe I keep my primes in an X-T5 or something, and I'll switch. I'll do it.
It's not that big of a deal. I got out of the Canon ecosystem. I'm basically out of Micro Four Thirds. I've switched systems, and you take a little bit of a price hit, but especially with Fuji stuff, the lenses aren't that expensive. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I think that like the pain of switching isn't as bad as it seems, and it's like if someone's not providing, like if you're not getting what you need out of your camera system, like switch.
Yeah.
Like for me right now, I'm getting what I need out of my camera system. I really like my Fuji stuff. I really love the videos that we're getting out of the XH2S. I'm like looking down the road at like what does the XH3 look like?
Yeah.
And what is Fuji doing? And if they don't like really commit to that line and continue moving it forward, like I'm not going to stick with it.
Yeah. Because to me, like you said, what we have now is great. The XH2S, it still feels like one of the leading, cameras that you can get for this stuff.
Absolutely.
But because they're always kind of a little behind, I'm just afraid everybody else is going to lap them.
Yep, that's exactly my concern too. It's just like you can see the potential. It's really good for what it is now, but it's behind everybody else. There's a ton of potential in front of it, but if they don't capitalize on it, it's like Fuji's never going to get enough market share to be viable for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Boy, have we done 7 hours on Fuji yet? we're done, right? Yeah. I feel like I have more here, but we should probably just go ahead and call it.
I think that basically says it all.
We're actually going to do another Fuji episode next week because I have more to say. But
I mean, to some extent, every episode of this podcast is just a little bit of a Fuji podcast.
Just like tiny little bit.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us, and if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter @CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.